Now welcome to another lightning response video, where this time we'll be talking a little bit about how the Bad Batch might end and what might come after it, what animated show might be next. And we'll start this off with a question from B. Wheeler, who asked, "Hey Thor, what odds do you give that the end of the Bad Batch isn't on a good note? That the Bad Batch fails, Tantus is destroyed, everyone dies, and the Empire just moves on? I think this would be a very compelling way to end the show, similar to Rogue One. They've done it once, maybe they do it again." And I'd say there's probably about a 99% chance that this doesn't end on a truly good high note or a completely positive one. Though I don't know or think they'll go full on Rogue One with the ending where everyone dies, or should I say everyone but Omega, because let's be real, there is no chance they're going to kill her off. Though in a way the ending could be kind of the opposite of Rogue One when you think about it, because though yes, all the main characters die in that movie, the mission itself is actually successful. They get the Death Star plans, and we know long run, the Rebellion gets the win over the Empire, in large part because of the success of what happened in Rogue One. And so part of me thinks in the Bad Batch that this is mainly going to be a failed mission, you could say, that they won't destroy Tantus and or free all the clones and get any sort of significant or concrete win in the end. I mean, we're just heading into what will arguably be the darkest time for the galaxy. It's been a couple years now since the Empire formed, and I'd kind of imagine the veil is only starting to finally fall and people are now starting to think or realize, you know what, maybe the Empire isn't all that great. This isn't what we expected. In other words, I think with the ending of the Bad Batch here, you want to imply things are only going to get much, much worse before they ever start to get better. And so I don't know that we will see any sort of like major win for the good guys, like destroying Tantus. Though, yeah, showing the Zillo Beast does imply that at least Omega is going to try to do just that. And who knows, she or it may be successful or at least hamper some of the projects that are going on in Tantus. Basically, I think at best and most likely, this will be a type of bittersweet ending, right? They will get a win of some kind, likely or most certainly. They will get Omega and the other four sensitive kids off of or out of Tantus. But they won't destroy Tantus or really put any sort of dent into the Imperial war machine or the plans they have. Though I suppose it's also possible they are successful, that they do destroy Tantus. And this is then the reason why operations, when it comes to cloning Palpatine and all that, why it is moved to Exegol. Then again, in The Mandalorian Season 3, they do mention that Project Necromancer is under the management of Commandant Hux, father of General Hux that we see in the sequel trilogy, which might imply Tantus is still there and active and the New Republic simply never found it. Or maybe they've moved to another location, one that isn't Exegol just yet. Or maybe they have multiple locations even, who knows. Either way, like I was kind of saying, I would expect some death and tragedy in the finale. I think there is almost no way that none of the Bad Batch die at all, or that they all live and then live happily ever after. And so to go down the list of the batch and my predictions for them, and do take to the comments below and give your predictions or odds for who lives and who dies, however you want to do it. But I do think we're going to lose Echo. I do think this show will be the final hurrah for the final member of Domino Squad. Now, how exactly he'll go out, I'm not so sure, but if someone sadistic like me were writing the show, I'd actually have Echo die in the carnage caused by the unleashing of the Zillo Beast, and for Omega to be aware Echo died because she let it go, thus scarring her for life. And I know that is absolutely horrible, and what's wrong with me for even considering such a possibility? Why would I do that to both Echo and Omega? And well, my answer to that is that not everyone gets a hero's death, and not all death has meaning. That's one of the harsh realities of life. For example, one of the most shocking moments in a show like Andor was when Nemec was crushed to death by the money they were stealing. You in the audience thought, and no doubt he in the show thought, he was going to get away, and then something really kind of stupid and random just happened that caught you completely off guard, and it hurt more because you never saw something like that coming. And I'm certainly not saying you want to turn Star Wars into Game of Thrones, where most of the deaths feel like they have no meaning whatsoever, or are even just kind of done for shock value at times. And what works in, say, a show like Andor or Game of Thrones is not necessarily going to work in The Bad Batch. But I really do think one of them should meet a very unfortunate fate that isn't telegraphed and ultra-heroic like Tech's death was, for example, last season. Not everyone gets to say something cool and impactful that hits you right in the feels right before they go out. Again, sometimes what hits the audience the hardest that reminds you this is called Star Wars and that crap happens in war is when something sudden and blunt happens that sends you kind of into shock. And the fact that I'm sure a lot of you listening now hate this idea, especially if it were to happen to someone like Echo, is maybe the exact reason why it should happen, I'd argue. Now, yes, this is a kids show, at least I think it is. I'm sure some do watch it along with all the adult fans who watch it. And it probably would feel out of place to do something like that. And so I really don't think they will. In fact, I won't be surprised at all if Echo just makes it out alive. But I do think it would feel very tragic to lose him in some sort of way like this, a pointless death, if you will. Especially since we know, or can count on, I think, either Hunter or Crosshair dying very heroically in this finale. But before we get to those two, let's talk about Wrecker's fate. Do I think he is going to live or die? And honestly, I think he makes it. I think his death would have already happened if it was going to happen. A couple episodes back with the explosion he narrowly escaped from would have been the perfect time and place for that, I think. And it would have given that shock value death I want to see for some reason. But honestly, I think he makes it out. I honestly don't think they've done enough with him to have his death feel very impactful, unfortunately. Which isn't to say I don't like him as a character or he's a bad character or anything of the sort. I think he's good. I think he's that big, dumb, fun, lovable uncle type. But I just don't think they're going to kill off the big, dumb, fun, lovable uncle in this show. Instead, I think they'll either kill Crosshair or Hunter, but not both. And part of me says they'll kill Crosshair or he'll go out very heroically because they have been building him up so much this season and throughout the whole show, really. And they've been doing that because they want to use him further down the road yet. Or it could be the opposite, I suppose. They've been building him up so much this season because they want his death to hit even harder. That's pretty much what they did with Tech in Season 2. And so, if I had to guess or make a final prediction here, I'm going to say Crosshair dies and Hunter lives. And the main reason I say that is because of, in the last episode, that whole conversation between Crosshair and Rampart, where it seemed like they wanted us to question Crosshair's loyalty. I think there will come a moment in the finale where he'll be able to get away or escape all by himself, and he almost chooses to do that, but stops himself and goes back to save Omega like she saved him, and it'll cost him his life. Though I really, really hope they don't do that because it feels way too telegraphed and predictable at this point. I really hope Crosshair lives and it's Hunter that dies. Sorry, Hunter, but they really haven't done much with you since Season 1, I feel. Alright, and let's do another quick question here about what might come next, what show might be next. And it comes to us from John as the Dad, who asked, "Hey Thor, what about Omega getting out with the 4 Force kids? They get to Ventress, and her with them is the next show, with maybe only Wrecker left." And, I could see that being exactly how this ends, though I'll modify it just a bit and say I think it'll be Wrecker and Hunter, though hopefully Wrecker and Crosshair. Again, I'm rooting for him to survive over Hunter. But it would make sense that Omega and whoever else may make it out would have no clue how to help these Force-sensitive kids or how to return them to their parents. And they'll also know that the Empire will never stop looking for them, so it doesn't really do much good to take them back to their parents, which is probably where they were found. So they will of course seek out one of the only 2 Force users they have encountered lately, that being Ventress, with the other being Gungi. And that'd also be the reason why they brought her back a few episodes back in the show to kind of set up the next show. Again, not unlike how they had a Bad Batch arc in Season 7 of the Clone Wars, where Echo was introduced to the team, and then that became the next series. And if it is Crosshair doing that, taking a child to be safe somewhere out in the galaxy, a Force-sensitive child, it'll show how he went from, at the beginning of this show, following orders and being ready to kill a Force-sensitive kid, that being Kanan or Caleb at the time, and that now, all of his own free will, as a person who gets to make his own choices, he decides to help some Force-sensitive kids. You could even call that poetry that it sort of rhymes.
Again, it's like poetry, so if they rhyme.
Mm-hmm.
Every stanza kind of rhymes with the last one.
And so, yeah, I do think you're on the right track here. And again, I'm sticking with my prediction that the next show will be called The Path or something along those lines, and will be set maybe a few years after the Bad Batch. And we'll have Omega, Ventress, Crosshair, or Hunter, maybe Quinlan Voss, and probably a few surprise characters as well, or returning characters. as well as some brand new characters, of course. That really feels like what they've been setting up with this final season, but again, we'll have to wait and see. Well, that is all I got for you this time. Now it is your turn to take to the comments below and give me your predictions for the series finale of The Bad Batch, who lives, who dies, and what comes next. Or you can always ask a question for a future lightning response video. All you gotta do is start your comment off with Hate Thor and then ask away. But whatever you choose to do, leave those comments below and let's talk some Star Wars. And until next time, thanks for watching.